Treyarch has been making zombies maps since 2008, with the very start of the game mode back in World at War, and there is no argument here that zombies is one of the best things to come to Call of Duty. Ever. There are a ton of things throughout the franchise that the developers at Treyarch didn't mess up, and this video is by no means meant to slander them, but today, we are pointing out the things that they did. Hello everyone, and welcome to Outside Oddities. Starting off here in Kino der Toten, we have sort of a weird one. Throughout almost every single zombies maps, there's these blood decals all over the place. And here in Black Ops 1, there's this one specific one that is a whole bunch of footprints. And of course, this decal gets reused throughout the map in multiple places, and sometimes stretched, for instance like this, where the footprints don't exactly make sense, but it still looks good anyway for at least a game that came out in 2011. But if we take a right turn out of spawn and go into the mule kick room, we'll see just outside this window that for some reason that same decal is being used on the wall. Doesn't make a lot of sense why there would be footprints on the side of a wall, and I imagine this was a mistake made in development at some point. They may have actually done this one on purpose and just used this as the blood smear across the wall, but it's very clear that those are supposed to be footprints. And although we do have these Nova crawlers that can walk on walls, they don't exactly walk on walls like this. So I'm gonna have to chalk this one up as a mistake. But shockingly, that is it for Kino, so heading on over to 5 for our next mistake. As I've mentioned very recently here on the channel, 5 was taken from a campaign mission, USDD, where you tour the Pentagon and meet JFK. And although it does have a lot of the same spaces, some changes that were made between the two versions of the map have led to a couple mistakes. On the mission USDD here, we can find 3 rooms that are scattered along the side of this massive office space. And each one of them are labeled with a different country: Vietnam, Germany, and Russia. And inside of each one of these rooms, as you would expect, is some materials and models that make sense for the country that they're assigned to. But in the zombies version of this map, well, some of these signs have changed, and most notably, the Germany and Russia ones. Here, just behind this window next to the elevator, we can find the Germany sign hanging above a door. A door that you can't normally go into, although there is an unused window location here. But clearly, in its current state, it's just outside of the map as some extra ambiance. And in its place here next to the door is the Russia sign, instead of across the hallway where it makes more sense for it to be, considering some of the modeling. It's instead next to the Germany door, and although the sign has changed, the modeling inside has not. The Berlin Wall mock-up is still here, and it doesn't really make sense for a Russia sign to be in front of this room. And although this sign is visible from inside the map, I doubt most people have noticed this. And I suppose this change was done simply because you couldn't see the Russia sign anymore from inside the map, and they needed an extra sign for this hallway, so they decided to swap things around a little bit. And before we move on to our next dev mistake, there is this room right here with these 2 floating Pixar lamps. Another thing that is left over from that campaign mission that I think is really cool. But heading on down the elevator now into the basement of 5. Here in the laboratories, in the very back right-hand corner, we find some pigs. Which this guy is not a mistake at all. However, in the window location that's in this room, in the very back corner here, there's this sign that has some chemistry bits on it, but the writing on it is backwards. And I'm not really sure if this is a mistake with the model here, or if the issue was with the person who placed it, but it definitely is completely backwards. It's like we're looking at it through a mirror. But before we move on to Ascension, let's go ahead and hit the box real quick. And if we take a look at the Galil model down there on the firing controls, we can see that the gun is permanently stuck on safe, which most weapons have a safety so that the gun can't accidentally be fired. And it's my best guess that when Treyarch scanned the weapon for development, that they had the safety on, and forgot, I suppose, to change that in the textures. So even though the Galil clearly shoots in-game, it works just fine, and in fact it's an excellent weapon in Black Ops 1. According to its model, it shouldn't be able to shoot at all. And in general, with weapon modeling in these early Call of Duties, there's a lot of mistakes. Like even here on the Galil, this button here that is meant to remove the dust cover is absolutely massive. Like, it looks kinda goofy once you realize it. And I'm sure this could be said about a lot of weapons in the game, but instead of making an entire list of that, let's head on to Ascension for our next mistake. There's a lot of little issues outside the map that could be pointed out, like this floating crane here, but as far as I'm concerned, you really can't see this from inside the map. I mean, you can, but honestly, it kind of looks like it's on the rail from here. So it's really hard to call that a dev mistake. But on our way towards Pack-a-Punch, if we look above us, there's this walkway that the zombies use to spawn, and underneath it, this red pipe clips straight through a set of stairs. And again, I doubt most players notice this, but this pipe also makes absolutely no sense. It leads nowhere. And on the other side, as I said, it clips straight through the staircase and just continues onward. And I doubt the developer that placed this would consider it a mistake because it's just there for extra detail, but as Call of Duty has advanced, I would call this a mistake nowadays, so it's going on the list. And although there was some disregard for things like this back then, it doesn't happen a ton. Like, most of the pipes on this map, even these ones that you can't normally see, do make sense, at least to some regard. But here's one in blatant view of the player that, well, something definitely seems to be wrong here. But that is certainly not the only mistake here on Ascension, which, by the way, I love this map, so I'm not trying to talk bad on it. But if we take a look at the wires here coming from the power station, well, some of them do make sense. For instance, this one here is dropping down and going to this little transformer before we can see it cut, with another line leading from it to the trap that's right here next to spawn. Most of the other wires seem to meander their way over here to this tower that connects to that walkway we just talked about, as this seems to be a connection to the main power line here leading outside the map. But there is one other wire here that leads from power that seems to go directly into a wall. Although this might not seem like the weirdest thing at first, considering it does happen a lot in Black Ops 1, like this lunar lander wire here, if we take a look on the other side of the wall, well, there is actually another power line that this connects to. And somewhere in development, this wall was constructed that cut it off. This wire would have made a lot of sense, actually, going to another power line that just makes its way outside of the map to this radar dish. But sadly, it seems another developer that was working on the map had some other plans for the area, and I guess these two things never got remedied. This might actually hint at this wall that we're looking at right now being a later thing that was added in development. It could very well be the case, actually, that this door right here wasn't there originally, and it was added to make these two ways you can go from spawn a bit more even. I don't know this to be the case, of course, but it's definitely the case that this wire got cut, quite literally, in development, even though the power line definitely still exists here outside the map. But that is it for Ascension, so head on over to Call of the Dead for our next mistake. Of course, throughout the map of Call of the Dead, there is a ton of water to be seen. And in most areas, you can walk through it, although you tend to get just a little bit cold.
Getting frostbite was so not on my list of things to do today.
And if we head on over towards Juggernaut, here next to one of the Pack-a-Punch locations, underneath the water, well, we'll see that the floor of the ship simply just cuts off. There is quite literally an area here where you are floating on nothing, and you can definitely see this as the player. I mean, it's not the most noticeable thing, just like this barrel here that's clipping into this box. But as it turns out, the water is hiding many a sins beneath its depths. Most of which, with a keen eye, you can definitely tell are a bit of an issue. And this is even true here in Spawn. Over by Quick Revive, there is some islands here that are quite literally floating, like, feet off the ground. Oh my god, I don't think I've ever seen that Pack-a-Punch animation up close. That was kind of cool. Like I said in the intro, there is a lot of things that the devs did right here in Black Ops 1, but yeah, once you see this one, it's kind of hard not to notice it. But for our next mistake, something that's quite unique to Call of the Dead, although it does happen in other maps as well, is there's a lot of curved surfaces. There's very few areas that are completely level, like the PhD building here, where the machine looks perfectly normal. It's not clipping into the floor, really, or the wall. But the same cannot be said for almost every other perk machine on this map. It can be kind of hard to get a model perfectly level in the orientation that you want it, and it turns out that here on Call of the Dead, that definitely proved to be an issue. And of course, this by no means is a huge problem. I doubt most players would pay any attention to this at all, but it definitely seems to be the case that most of these vending machines are clipping just a little bit. The ones that don't have this issue are perks like Deadshot here that are on flat ground and aren't clipping with the walls behind them because they're backed off a bit. But then we'll see things like Stamina up here that is definitely backed off of the wall, but the floor itself has quite a bit of a curve to it, and because of it, the bottom of the machine is almost completely buried. I know this is sort of a small one, but I thought it's kind of cool, and it's an ode to placing these models in Radiant if you've ever done that yourself. It can be a bit tedious at times. But now it's time to jump off the ship and head on over to Shangri-La for our next mistake. In all honesty, there are very few things to pick at in this map. It really was crafted with a lot of detail, and there's not many things that you could call a mistake. But here inside the mudroom, if we look outside this window, there's one that's pretty tough to not call an issue. And although it's probably not the most noticeable thing in the world, there's just this floating brick right here. If we take a look outside the map what's going on, it's very clear the developer that made this wanted there to be this sort of chasm in the wall, a big crack if you will. But it seems that somehow a couple bricks here were left behind and are quite literally just floating there attached to this metal beam. And I suppose you could say that that's why they're here, they're just attached to this beam, but that doesn't really make a lot of sense physically. And it does seem sort of like they were just left behind here from what probably used to be a full wall. After all, each one of these cuts in the brush had to be made by someone, and it seems like one of them just got left behind. But as quickly as we have come here, it is time to leave Shangri-La and head on over to Moon for our next mistake. On the map Moon here, after you get the power on, there are these excavators outside the map that will start to move throughout the match. And after doing so, if you don't stop them by using the hacker tool, well, they will dig into the map and depressurize the area that they do so in. And one of the possible areas for the excavator to hit is the biodome. This area that I'm looking at right here is the area that the excavator can smash into. And of course, when it does, this whole side of the biodome gets destroyed and it's open to the empty atmosphere above. And of course, that is not a mistake. It is a really cool feature of the map, but it has led to a little bit of an issue. If you shoot those panels that can be destroyed, your bullets go straight through them. And this is much more obvious when using the ray gun. As you can see, normally when you shoot one of the glass panels, it does indeed have collision with them. But due to this section here of the biodome being breakable, you can shoot right through it. And I'm guessing this was done because they didn't want the ray gun and other weapons for that matter to look like they were shooting an invisible barrier when the glass was broken. But of course, with a little bit of extra time, and at least I assume that they had this technology back in Black Ops 1, some geo that has collision with bullets could have been put here and then removed once the excavator did its thing, but it seems that just wasn't done. And I'm not sure if that's out of a lack of development time, or simply they just didn't think it was worth doing back then, which I suppose if that's the case, maybe it's not a mistake. But either way, it's definitely the case that you can shoot right through that section of the wall and not anywhere else. For our next mistake here on Moon, of course, there is low gravity, and jumping around, that becomes immediately apparent once you teleport here. And in real life, of course, this low gravity environment would apply to everything, including bullets as well as the zombies. And actually, in Call of Duty, it kind of does. I mean, bullets already in this game are hit scan. It's like there is no gravity in general anyway, so you're pretty much always on the moon in Call of Duty, at least back in Black Ops 1. And zombies, as you shoot them, they do have some low gravity effects, which is really cool to see. But something the developers seem to have forgot to apply this to is the cables that you can find throughout the map. Just like every other zombies map, there are a ton of these just chilling around the map, but you can see, just like a normal cable would be on Earth, they're drooping a lot. And this just wouldn't be the case on the moon. And that is because the droop on these cables is directly related to the pull of gravity that they're feeling. And here on the moon, of course, they're feeling a lot less gravity than they would on Earth. These cables look perfectly fine for something that you would find on Earth, but for Moon, well, it seems the developers didn't make extra models here, which probably would have been a ton of work to do. And as we covered in the last video, of course, Moon was an entirely different map that was set on Earth at one point, so I suppose there wasn't enough time in development to do so. It's completely understandable, but it is definitely a mistake, I think, worth pointing out, at least because I'm a physics nerd. But that, ladies and gentlemen, are all of the mistakes in Black Ops 1 that I wanted to show you. And of course, there are plenty more, and also plenty in Black Ops 2 to check out, so let me know down in the comments if you want another episode like this. But for now, I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you did, consider leaving a like down below. It helps me out a ton. And of course, make sure you're subscribed so you can come back for more. And if you want to watch more of my content, you can click one of the videos on your screen right now. But if not, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stay awesome, and peace out.